All right, the meeting is now recorded. So we will call the meeting to order now at 3:02. And before we get started, I would just like to respectfully acknowledge that the SFSS is located on the traditional unceded territories of the Coast Salish peoples, which include the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Katzie nations. And unceded means that these territories have never been handed over, sold, or given up by these nations, and we are currently situated on occupied territories, pardon me. And as well, we're all working from different points in the Lower Mainland, I believe, or wherever we're currently working from, and just recognizing that, we're privileged to work on these lands. So we will get started with the roll call of attendance. So I'll just go down the list on the agenda and list, please tell me your name, your pronouns, and any access needs that you have right now for this meeting. And if access needs change, please just let us know throughout the meeting. So we'll start with the president.
Hi, everyone. My name is Asif. My pronouns are she and her. My access needs have been met as of right now, but I will have to leave around 3:30 to attend a search committee meeting, which I can't miss. So I'll be leaving.
Thank you. My name is Gabe. My pronouns are he, him, his, and my access needs are met as of right now. VP Finance.
Hi, my name's Corbett. Pronouns are he, him, his, and my access needs are met. Thank you.
Thank you. VP Student Services.
Okay, Matthew Provost. My pronouns are he, him, his, and as of right now, my access needs are met.
Thank you, Matt. At-large representative.
Hi, my name is Bilqis, she, hers, and my access needs are met.
Thank you. We also have society staff, campaigns, research, and policy coordinator.
Hi, everyone. It's Sarah, she, her, and hers, and all of my access needs have been met.
Thank you. Executive director.
Hi, everyone. Sylvia, she, her, hers. My access needs are met. Thank you.
Thank you. Executive assistant.
Hi, everyone. Shanika Blake, she or hers, and my access needs are met at this time.
Administrative assistant.
Hi, I'm Christine, she, her, hers, and all my access needs are met.
Thank you. And we also have our science representative here attending the meeting.
Hi, my name is Wei Chen, pronouns he, him, his. Accessibility needs are met.
Amazing. So, and pardon me, I believe Shibangi is on the call too.
Hi, everyone. Shibangi here. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and all my access needs are met at this time.
Perfect. So with that, we'll move on to the adoption of the agenda. 4.1. So be it resolved to adopt the agenda as presented. Do I have a mover?
Corbett moves.
Corbett moves. Is there a seconder?
Bilqis seconds.
Bilqis seconds. Is there any amendments to the agenda that need to be made? Looks good. Okay, seeing none, we'll move to a vote. Seeking unanimous consent on the motion. All those in favor, and please just unmute your mic if you want to dissent. All right, seeing no opposition, the motion carries unanimously. We will move on to 5.1, the matters arising from the minutes. So be it resolved to receive and file the following meeting minutes. January 30th, 2020. Wow, that was a long time ago. Is there a mover? Is there a mover? Corbett moves. Thank you. Is there a seconder?
Matt.
Matt moves. Perfect. Is there any discussion on that? All right, seeing none, we'll move to a vote.
I'm just saying
the
agenda from the last meeting. I was supposed to update the inter-director conflict resolution. It kind of fell through the cracks, so I'll do that and discuss with Sarah and send it to the next meeting.
Okay, thank you, Shanika. All right, so just moving on to a vote on matters arising from the minutes. All those in favor of the motion seeking unanimous consent? And seeing no opposition, that motion will carry unanimously. So we'll move on to our discussion items. First off is 6.1, priorities for the year. So, hello everyone, welcome to our first governance committee meeting. This is very exciting. We're getting things kicked off for the year. I'm very excited to be here, and thank you everyone for taking the time out of your days to be here. I thought that the first thing we should discuss, as it is our first meeting, is to just kind of go over some priorities for the year and what are some of the big initiatives that we want to take on. And we did have a short meeting yesterday that Shanika and Sarah hosted for us, and we kind of went over some of the things that we could take on this year. And in truth, there definitely will not be a shortage of things we can take on, and I foresee that this will be one of the busier committees this year, and that's good because the committee last year didn't necessarily meet as frequently as it should have. Meetings weren't called at the frequency that the importance of this committee dictates. So I'm hoping that this year we can meet more frequently and hopefully get more done. And so right now, at least for this semester and probably going into the fall, in my opinion, and I would love to hear your guys' opinions as well, but I think we have two main priorities right now. The first one, obviously coming out of our board meeting last week, is our governance restructuring. And that is going to take up a lot of our time for the next 30 days or so until we have to report back to the board on ideas we formed for recommendation to the board. And that's going to be part of reviewing our board policies and doing research on different governance structures used by different student societies and trying to decide which one's going to work best for us. That's number one. Number two is our bylaw review. And the reason it's number two is because it's one of the more time-sensitive ones. We are going to have a solid draft set of bylaws, probably by, I don't know, July or August, because we're going to have to form some kind of campaign as to why this bylaw review is so important. And making sure that it actually passes via our annual general meeting or via referendum or however we decide to try and pass these bylaws. And then other projects that can be taken on over the year. I think that a good thorough review of our elections policies are definitely should be on the agenda for this year. And in that regard, I would really like to take advice from multiple sources, taking advice from elections or consult with previous election candidates, reviewing the IEC report or reports from the past, and hopefully forming some kind of working group that can give recommendations on what to include in a new set of elections policies that we should draft. Also including groups such as council or student union execs, people just trying to involve student input more in something as important as our elections policies. Fourthly, I would like this committee to work further on developing further issues policies. And the first issues policy was developed last year and helped to solidify the society's pro-choice stance in response to certain events that did occur on campus. And I'm very happy that happened, and it was definitely a first steps in terms of issues policies, and there's lots of room for this committee to develop further issues policies in this coming year, and hopefully in conjunction with other equity groups on campus. And lastly, a big thing of mine, and I know there are some others on this committee too, is empowering council. And this can be done through many ways throughout the year, through our bylaw review, via our policies. And some things we've already done at the last board meeting, such as including counselors on all committees and ensuring they're privy to all our policy changes and we're actively consulting them. And just trying to make sure little things like board members are always present at council meetings and should be able to appear in front of council and provide them with information at their request. So those are some of the things that I brainstormed as priorities for the year. And there is a lot more that governance committee can do other than just policies, of course. So I would love to hear from some of you about what I just said and if you have anything to add or change or discuss.
Hi, can I jump in?
Of course.
Sorry, I should probably do the proper.
Yeah, I apologize. I forgot to go over that at the beginning of the meeting. If you want to speak, just type list in the chat box and I will add you to the list. Also can go for.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Also can go first and then Corbett.
Go ahead. I think you started talking while I was typing. Or sure, I guess I'll go. One thing that I was hoping to get to last year that we didn't have, we unfortunately weren't able to get to was the issues policies. So I don't know if everyone has had a chance to look, but as of right now, there's only one policy in there. I'm hoping we can probably expand on that a little bit. And I think even in the minutes that were passed just now for this last council meeting, there is a couple of different policy manuals that I compiled that had some issues policies, and we actually used to have some as well a few years ago before they were removed. So we may take some time to go through those ones, reinstate some of them, update some of them, because obviously some of them may be a little bit outdated. I'm hoping that even if this is not, the top priority for the summer semester, at least, it's something that we can revisit in coming semesters and flesh out a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Asib. Corbett?
Yeah, I don't know if this would be a policy thing or would go through a different area, but be good to have more formal guidelines or structure around board training. Like, it's great that we have development sessions and stuff, but I think because the requirements of a board's legal requirements, knowledge requirements and stuff, that we should have a little bit more structure around what information board members should know about to be able to fulfill their duties, and maybe even a rough timeline. It's not uncommon for board members to take potentially up to a whole year to really understand their job, and sometimes a lot of them then don't run again. And so it'd be nice if there's ways for us to shorten that time period, or have just more ideas and resources around that. That's all.
Thank you, Corbett. Matt?
Hello. One thing that I was brought to my attention that I also was wondering about is if the governance committee could be tasked with looking over the service agreement that was supposed to go through FNSA, and then have updating FNSA members if they want to make any changes, and then hopefully getting that done sometime before, I don't know, middle fall, just to look over it and have the committee look over what was in it and if there needs to be any changes, and then start the consultation process on getting that signed again. Because it hasn't been signed. It's been outstanding for since 2018. So I'd like to get that moved.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, Matt, I agree. I'm just curious if that's under the jurisdiction of governance committee, or if there's another committee that would be in charge of that, if someone does know the answer. Sylvia?
I'm going to suggest that that's put in the executive committee agenda, because FNSA being part of the SFSS as the Women's Center or out on campus, it is, it's beyond the scope of what the governance committee should do. So I would suggest that you put it under the executive committee.
Mhm. Perfect. Thank you. Alrighty. Is there any more discussion? Perfect. All right. So that wraps up our 6.1 discussion item, and we'll move on to 6.2, which is governance restructuring. So, of course, at our last board meeting, we did pass the motion to initiate a governance restructuring and task the governance committee with looking that over and report back to the board in 30 days. So right today, I guess our priority is to begin laying out our first steps and tasking, brainstorming tasks and what needs to happen in order for this to be successful. Sorry, someone was yelling upstairs. So what this needs to be successful. So I'll open up the floor to discussion. I have a feeling Corbett looks like he's trying to talk. Yeah, Corbett, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so at this level, we'd want to do a lot of research and review. So gathering different governance models that are common in other student societies, as well as maybe new ones coming down the pipe, and taking them, reviewing them, looking at how they fit in with our values, with our needs, and then giving recommendations, and then looking also how, at least at a high level, what changes to our policies would have to happen for some of these different models. And then we further down, we can then make a recommendation to the board.
Perfect. Okay. So another thing that we also need to do, I believe. Yeah, also, do you actually want to speak before I go ahead?
Yeah, I just wanted to say the timeline, or at least the steps that Corbett has set out for us, I think are probably going to be a good way to start off, and also taking the time to make sure that we're familiar with our own policies right now and understand the context behind them and how they've been working for us, and also taking a look at some of our older policies too. So I think the beginning stages of this is going to be a little more about information gathering more than anything, and then taking a look at how other student societies do it and see what's working, what's not working, and going from there.
Mm-hmm. Of course, and a lot of that is, as per the motion that was passed at the board meeting, going through the 2015 board policies as well. And the motion that was passed was under the idea that the 2015 policies do have a lot of are solid in a lot of respects, and parts of that could be favorable to us. So part of that is tasking people to go through the 2015 policies and kind of nitpick what could we take out of this, what do we want to keep, and what maybe necessarily is outdated or what we can't use. And that goes same for our current policies. What's good in our current policies? And what do we want to remove, change, or not include? Sarah, your mic's unmuted. Would you like to say something?
Sorry about that. I did not know it was.
That's okay. So I'm just kind of saying out loud what we've said. So yeah, gathering different governance models and trying to find the popular and unpopular ones that are used by other student societies, and which ones have been successful, and how do those structures work at a high level, and what general changes need to happen to our policies to make this happen. Sylvia?
Sorry. So my beginning question whenever I think of a project that I want to take on is, what is the outcome that I wish to have? So I'm asking the question, what is the outcome of this governance review?
Sure. So just awesome.
I think the end goal for me is to move away from the Carver model. I think it was already outlined in the motion that we passed that, you know, in principle, we don't support the way that it's been working as of right now. And I think in the end, while obviously I don't know exactly what our model is going to look like, because that's the purpose of undergoing the review, I think something that is a little less disjointed than what we have right now, and something that can ensure that the board members' knowledge is more continuous across the organization, even as that pertains to operational stuff. I'm sure other board members have their own feelings and input, but that was what I gathered from the conversation at the board table, and also my own personal opinion.
Yeah. Thank you, Asad. Is there any further discussion?
So I just would like to understand, not as I said, and I've said it many times before, and I've said it to the prior board, the Carver model is a very sophisticated model, which is not for the faint of heart. But my question is that you dislike the Carver model. Is the Carver model going to be part of your examination? Because one thing is to say we don't like it. You have to be very clear as to why is it that you don't, what is it that you don't like, the parts that could potentially work, as you said before, the parts that, so the review should contain that which you also do not like, not only the things that you would like to see happen or reverting back to 2015 or moving sideways to somewhere else. That review should give anybody who comes after you the ability to understand your thinking. Saying that you don't like it and you don't support it is one thing, but you have to objectively show why it doesn't work for SFSS. What worked with it, what didn't work, and so on. So that for historical purposes, people can read back your rationale and understand it.
I definitely agree, Sylvia. And of course, we're not going through this process just to say we don't like Carver and we're repealing it. That's it. We're moving on. Of course, we're going to, as part of this process, critically review the Carver model and outline why specifically it doesn't work for student societies, and as well in the context of the SFSS, going over the history of, you know, what worked before the Carver model was implemented, and how was that, what changed once it was actually implemented back in 2015. Asad, would you like to go ahead?
You basically read my mind, what I wanted to say. In that part of our report that is brought back to the board as a whole is definitely going to have very thorough critiques of the pros and the cons of the Carver model and whatever other models or hybrids of models that we're proposing to the board. And it will, I guess, all I'm trying to say is rest assured that this critique will definitely be brought back to the board.
Excellent, thank you.
Amazing. So I guess my question is, just so we're clear, what are the tasks and outcomes that need to come out of this conversation today in order to walk away from this meeting, get some work done and bring it back at the next governance meeting?
Gabe, Belkis was on the list as well before me.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see that. Belkis, go ahead.
Well, it was to Sylvia's question, but you guys kind of reiterated everything. Now, to what you had just asked about what should come out of today, I think I'm not sure if you meant like right now in this meeting or between now and the next board meeting, but I definitely think we need to go really thoroughly as a priority through the 2015 manual, just to see what we do want to pull out and keep or update to make more like appropriate for the current context of the SFSS. Yeah, I do think that is a priority.
Yeah, I can jump in too. For me, I'd like kind of first steps to be gathering a lot of one, maybe grabbing contacts for people to talk to, other student societies, other student leaders, because it's important also to get their perspective on, from a government side, how their environment works and what they like and don't like, as well as gathering information on the different models that exist. Different administrative. The problem I find when I've done this in the past, sometimes you have similar models with different names. So there's a little bit of double checking for overlap. Sometimes they have fancy names, sometimes they don't. So we have to do some Googling and grabbing guides where we can.
Sure. So looking at the pros and cons of not just Carver, but other models that are used by student societies, and also outlining their pros and cons and trying to contextualize how it would work within our organization. Anything else on this matter?
Oh, sorry, I forgot I didn't unmute. I can start a rough document, just a skeleton, to make this get something on the page, and then we can it can be improved upon and fleshed out. That's my initial idea. That's what I usually like to do it for a start. Gets goal setting, values listed, things like that.
Perfect. So I can create some kind of document and share it with members of the governance committee, and over the course of the next 2 weeks before our next governance committee meeting, we can compile some of our research and bring that forward to the committee. Matthew?
I think it would be good for all of us to, while staying organized on this project, maybe looking at key points of what we want everybody to do, and then we can check in through the Google Doc and everything else. Like if you want someone specifically to look over, if you want 2 people to look over the 2015 policy manual, I know most of us have probably already read it, but doing, pros and cons, and then someone looking at a different researching different models, and then coming together to maybe have like an informal meeting before we have our next meeting, and just tasking that, because I just don't want to get lost, I guess, doing this, because it's kind of like a lot of stuff and a lot of things that we're looking at once, and I just want to make sure that we're doing it in a way that is organized, and our points are getting across, and everything's being done thoroughly, and we don't miss anything. So hopefully by the end of this meeting, if we're able to have an outcome where people have specific tasks, that'd be really nice for me.
Cool. Thank you, Matt. I'm just trying to think, would it be just kind of putting it out there, would it be helpful to have our next meeting in 2 weeks or a week, just to kind of put a little more, not pressure, just structure, and try and get this, you know what I'm trying to say, Matt, just trying to motivate us to get this done in a timely manner.
Sorry, I didn't put my name on the list, but I was thinking, because we have a time limit of 30 days, I think it might be in our best interest to meet weekly, just to see where everyone is. And then if people need extra support with stuff, or if we're finding things that we need to do, then we can figure that out. See you later. Just things like that. I think it might be best to meet weekly, since this is kind of something big that we're working on.
Okay, perfect. I will keep that in mind. Any final discussion on this topic?
Yeah, I'm fine with meeting weekly because I've kind of set aside this time for as much as necessary for this term. So
perfect. All right, no more discussion? Sounds good. We will move on to the next agenda item. Is anyone here on the Accessibility Committee?
I am.
Okay, well, it might still be worthwhile to have the meeting and catch Matt up. I'm just trying to think. And if Osip can come, of course, that'd still be good. We'll give it some thought and discuss this outside the meeting. Cool. Oh, that's a good point. Thank you. All right, so we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is the first year engagement committee terms of reference review. Now, as was brought to the board meeting last week, pardon me, I'm just trying to pull something up. Okay, thank you, Shanika. That's good to know. So as was discussed at the last board meeting, it was me. So I brought a motion to the board table to have a new committee established called the First Year Engagement Committee. And there were some issues that were brought up regarding some of the material in terms of reference. So I would just like to go over that now today, so we can bring this back to the board table and hopefully this passes successfully at the board table. I would just like to, if that's all right with everyone, I'm going to share my screen here because I'd like to go over the terms of reference. And Sarah, I would also like to hear what you have to say about the terms of reference, because you did mention you did have a few concerns about its content in its current state. So is everyone able to see my screen? Okay, perfect. So Sarah, am I able to call on you?
Sure. I think the main concern was just the composition of the committee.
Mm-hmm.
I would suggest having more or equal number of board members as there are non-board members.
Okay, so right now there's the president, 1, 2, 6. All right, so there's 7 here and 6 here. That was your concern?
Yeah, I would perhaps move it to up to 5, because all of them are up to. If there's more because more students want to be on it than board members, I think that's different, but just having the structure so it's equal maximum, if that makes sense.
Oh, I see. So your suggestion is just change this to 5, so then they're equal if it were to be up to the maximum amount?
Yeah.
That works for me. I'm happy with that. There was another thing I noticed too. We amended all the other terms of reference to include in person or electronically, and I hadn't added this here. So that needs to be added as well. Corbett?
Yeah, sorry, since I can't see the whole terms of reference, I had a question. Is this primarily advisory type committee for like events and initiatives that could go for first years, or is this also going to have its own budgets and in charge of its own initiatives?
Yeah, my intention, and I think the intention of the other individuals who put this proposal forward, and Balkis, you can also speak to this too if you want, was for this committee to plan its own initiatives and first year events. Obviously, that's going to be slightly more difficult right now in the face of COVID-19 and first years and ourselves working from home and doing school from home. So I'm not quite sure how that would work this year, but as a standing committee that will go forward in the future, yes, that was the intention, I believe.
Okay, because yeah, because I'm just wondering if it was primarily advisory, then having like equal amount of board members that aren't necessarily first years might, I don't know, it seemed like is the issue of like advisory, like getting the wrong advice or taking the wrong perspectives. Because we can't necessarily, then again, we also can't necessarily control how many board members might end up being first years. So it's I don't know. And also then coming with spending and stuff, like, is it legally required that you have to have equal number of board members, or is it more just a good idea as opposed to, you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean, and I'd actually like to ask you, Sarah. I know that was one of your concerns or reasoning for your concern about having equal number of board members in relation to counselors and students at large, and your reasoning was because of the Societies Act and its emphasis on board members having that fiduciary duty. But I'm confused as to where in the Societies Act that that reasoning came from, and I'm just curious. Maybe you might be able to quote that part or provide that to us at another time, just because I know that in the past, and I'll have to find it, but there have been committees where there are less board members than actual students at large. Actually, pardon me, Balkis, would you like to speak first?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask for clarification on that as well, because the Societies Act doesn't go into that, anything like details about committees, and we do have a committee right now, which is the Surrey Committee, that does have more at large than actual students, like actual board members. It says at least 2 and up to 4 board members in addition to the chair, and up to 6 at large. So I'm wondering, like, I guess what's the harm in having more at large than board members? Because if we do want this to be centering the first year experience, it is important that we have like first years, have first years giving their input and just being there to make decisions and recommendations and stuff like that. So I'm wondering, I guess what's the harm? That's my main issue, because it's possible within our policies. So yeah, that's my only question, I guess, for Sarah. I'd appreciate if you could speak to that.
Sure. Did you want me to speak, or did Corbett have something to say?
Sorry, I forgot I was not muted. Mostly it was a question about practicality. Like, say we have equal numbers, like almost all our committees are between board and at-larges, but we also have sometimes the odd issue where a board member can't make it, so they, but I'm assuming it still meet within quorum levels, so that the whole committee can meet. Is there issues on that where there's potentially more at-larges voting than attended board members voting? I'm just thinking about in practice, like if there's any actual issue or not, if it's just, that's where I'm trying to go, if it makes sense to you.
Yep, I think it's the same issue for sure when there's not quorum, but it's ultimately the board's decision, because I believe it's section 29. Don't quote me on that, but it's something in the 20s of the Societies Act, where it talks about the board must supervise the management of or manage the fiscal affairs of the society. So effectively, when you have a committee that has a budget that's discharged from the board, so the only reason committees get budget is because the board has approved that expenditure of the budget to those committees. So when you have more non-board members on a committee, that is the board discharging that fiscal duty to a group that's not comprised solely of board members. So it's the same issue if there's more built into the policies first, if it comes up from a quorum issue. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just something the board has to be aware of, that they are somewhat discharging that duty to a group that isn't board. So that's just my recommendation. It's not illegal. It's not going to say in the Societies Act you can't do this. That's not how the law works. But I would recommend keeping it equal in the policies.
Okay. Thank you, Sarah. Sylvia?
So while you were all chatting, I was looking up the Societies Act, and as Sarah has just said, it is there is such a thing as best practices and practices that do not put board members or the organization at risk potentially. So when everything is going fine and we're all getting along and so on, what you're trying to do is fine. However, as Sarah just said, you are discharging your responsibility onto a committee that may make decisions that may affect the organization, but the board is ultimately responsible for its fiduciary responsibilities and due diligence. So will it say black and white as you wanted in the law, what you wanted to say? No, it is the circumvent way of saying if you give your power away to a committee that doesn't have a recognition in the law, if they do something that is contrary to the law, then you are responsible. So that is why Sarah is raising the flag, and rightly so. The only way I would see of circumventing this is for the committee to only have recommendation powers, which means that whatever is decided at the committee then needs to be brought to the board in order for the board to say yay or nay. And then you're no longer discharging your duty to manage the organization onto a committee. You're actually making the ultimate decision.
Okay, thank you, Sylvia. Corbett, you're on the list.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of understand what you're talking about, Sylvia. I was just wondering, isn't the same logic applied to with the board delegating powers to staff and administration then? I can understand the idea of since the committee would be potentially lots of volunteers involved on it. It feels like it's kind of the same thing to me, and I'm just confused on that. That's all.
If I can answer, yes, it is. I mean, under the Societies Act, the only bodies with any real power, first of all, is the members of the organization, and those members have entrusted a board of directors to manage the affairs of the organization. So then the board of directors can have committees, can have staff, can have consultants, can have many things to help them do their work, because it is impossible, I would suggest, for a board of directors to be at the same time trying to govern an organization and then, I don't know, printing checks and writing policies and all of that. That's why powers are delegated to staff. But that's why you also have a governance model that showcases how that delegation will be rolled back up to the board, so that you know that the due diligence of those you entrusted with whatever powers are actually doing what they're supposed to be doing. So whether it is job descriptions, contractual agreements, governance model, policies that are in place, all of that rolls back up to the board be able to do proper oversight and ensuring itself that the mandate is being carried out properly. That's why I said earlier that the Carver model is a very sophisticated model that can work very well for when boards are keeping a very clear understanding of that model. But there are other models like Imagine Canada, leadership, governance as leadership, and other models that are equally as sophisticated and can work. But that's basically it. The board can give away its can assign the responsibility to carry on certain things within the organization, but ultimately has the responsibility and accountability for all that happens in that organization. And because you are delegating to others, you have to be able to put the parameters in place for that delegation to be successful and also for that delegation to be reportable back to you.
Corbett, is that a direct reply, or I think Matt's also on the speakers list, so.
Yeah, I guess kind of. It's like, so yeah, I understand what you're saying, Sylvia. If I understand also right, all our current committees are required to report to the board on any spending they do, and that allows us to have oversight, the board perform oversight. And I assume we'd have the exact same thing with this particular committee or any other future committees, that same process and model. And so I think it's okay if we have a few more at-larges than board in some cases, because again, there might be like practical considerations where even with a 50-50 split, there might be times where a board member is not able to attend, but the quorum is still maintained. So to me, it's as long as the chair and the board members are reporting back to board and keeping everyone in the loop, and then we can control any future issues. Thanks.
So, sorry, can I ask a question, because I'm not clear as to how you can control if you have a committee of, let's say, 10 and 6 of them are non-board members, and every single person has the same equal vote. If 6 of those individuals decide on something that could potentially go against, let's pick our favorite subject. Let's pretend the events committee has 6 at-large and 4 board members, and 6 of those board at-large students decide that a fall kickoff is going to happen. And then they come to the board and they say, you delegated that power to this committee and we voted, we each have a vote, we shall have a fall kickoff. What do you do then? That's what I think we're getting at. The fact that there may be decisions that you do not want to have to arm wrestle a committee to undo. So just putting that out there.
I understand. The way I would view it as control is the budget size, the currently, in case of your example, anything over a certain amount would have to go to the board anyways, and the board would have final say. I understand that's just one example. There might be smaller ones or more other issues. But at the end of the day, yes, the board can step in and they can do some initial controls through having, especially in this case, my recommendation for this particular committee would have a small budget, very small budget, first off, as a pilot project, as a reasonable control. And if we find issues, then we can make changes. And that would reduce risk, in my opinion.
I'm just going to let Matt speak because he's been waiting for a long time, and I've let a few people speak over him. So, Matt.
So I understand we're getting caught up with looking at how many people are supposed to be on the committee, especially for at-large members. I guess what everyone else was saying around the budget and everything, I don't want to get too caught up in like legalities. I know it's just an open conversation, but I just like, I understand there are going to be risks, if any. Like, I understand that this committee is here to support first years, and I just don't understand like what, like I would like to understand like the risks. Like it sounds like there's a lot of risks that are gonna happen if, you know, I just don't understand like what could happen. And then like Corbett was saying, there's ways of mitigating that if that happens with a budget. And also, you know, there can also be, you know, accountability process, which there usually is. And yeah, I'm just feeling a little bit confused on getting caught up on like the risks. And if there are, can you please give me some examples, especially for this? It's like the first year committee, if they're going to be like hosting small events, or like there's going to be board members and they're going to have to bring stuff to the board table. So I would like to know more about what everyone's thoughts are around that.
Does a board member want to speak first or no? Okay, Sylvia, or pardon me, Balkis.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think we're talking a lot about the composition, composition of the board, when I don't really see, like Matt was saying, there has been these conversations about risk, but that sort of thing is managed through having like spending limits and on money that a committee can pass. And we really haven't seen, to my knowledge, there haven't really been issues with the study committee, which does have more at-large members than board members. And I just don't see, at the end of the day, it's them recommending and bringing stuff to the board if they want to go on with some grand kind of plan. So, yeah, I guess that's all my input. I just think it's important we center first-year students and like the direction that they want to go in, and having a more equal or more board members kind of it's just not necessary.
Corbett? You're muted, Corbett.
Thank you. So yeah, just doing a quick look at the TOR. This particular committee is not tied to any particular department, right? So there probably wouldn't even be a budget tied to it at all in the first place. So this would probably be advisory, at least for the first year, maybe even. Is that correct? Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes.
Okay, then if it's just recommended, yeah, then it's as Sylvia said, there's not as any real issue then. If in the future, we could make some guidelines of stuff in the future for committees, especially around spending, but if it's advisory, this is fine as is.
Perfect. Thank you for the clarification, Corbett. So I think if we're good on the composition piece, I think we've had a thorough discussion on that. Is there any other concerns about the other parts of the terms of reference? Looks good. All right. Thank you for your suggestions, Sylvia and Sarah, and they've been really helpful, and we'll definitely look into that before bringing this to the board again. So we'll move on. Is there any further discussion on this, or can we move on to the next agenda item? Perfect. We'll move on to 6.4, bylaw review update. So far, just trying to think of what's happened so far. A few months back, the bylaw consultant presented at the the board of directors, and just kind of outlined what this bylaw review process would be like, and the process that it would undergo throughout the next few months. That same presentation was also done for council. And then a survey was open to students, and students were able to give their input on what they wanted to see in the draft bylaws. And that was also presented to council, or board and council, at a joint session. And a lot of information was, a lot of suggestions and concerns were brought forward about those bylaws. And right now, I just wanted to discuss kind of what our next steps are for the bylaw review. And I believe, I wish Asib were still here, because we need to set a date for the consultant to come in and present the draft bylaws to the board. I'm not actually sure if there's been a date set for that, or Sylvia or Shanika, or has Asib communicated with you on that?
I know that the last time, sorry, this is Sylvia. The last time we spoke with the consultant, it was supposed to be towards mid-June for her to come to do the consultation with the board. Sarah, is my memory faulty? Or Shanika, sorry.
That was the agreement with the consultant, but following up from our meeting yesterday, OSAB was supposed to find out from the board when you are all available and get back to me. She had said within the next 2 weeks, but I told her I would have to inform the consultant as soon as possible if that's the case.
Okay. So yeah, I'll talk to her about that, and I'll actually bring it up in our board Discord, and hopefully in the next few days I can help OSIP set a date for that, so we can you can let the consultant know as soon as possible. There was something else I was going to mention. Sarah, you can go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to check in. So this was the date, what we talked about yesterday for the consultation with the board. Did you have any idea of when you were thinking to do the all-student consultation? Because I've developed the survey for that, and I'll release it at the same time as the all-student consultation. So just wondering about that.
Yeah, so if we're doing our board consultation somewhere around mid-June, and we're aiming for these to be passed at our September AGM, I would assume somewhere probably mid to late July. I don't know if anyone wants input on that. And again, I think that's something that I can bring forward with OSIP too, and we can try and figure out a date or set a specific date for that or time frame. Perfect. Sylvia, did you want to say something? Because your mic is unmuted.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize, but I just wanted to say that please remember we have to work backwards from the date, the AGM, and the notice that we have to give the members. So I think, you know, I don't know if the AGM is set for the 3rd week of September, it's 21 days, if I remember correctly, in our current bylaws. So we have to always work backwards. And give enough time for the consultant to be able to write the draft, the final draft, before it goes to the members. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I guess that's another priority too, is deciding when our AGM is happening and work from there.
Yes, I would appreciate that.
Perfect. Okay, cool. And there was something else I was going to mention here, but I'm forgetting. So we will move on from the bylaw review update if there's no other questions or concerns on this discussion topic. Oh, thank you, Corbin. That was what I was going to say. Sarah, a while ago, you showed Corbin and I the individual responses from students that were provided for the bylaw survey, and you compiled it into a report. I was curious. At the time, you mentioned that we couldn't have a copy of it because it was personal information and that can't be shared with anyone else. I was curious though, and as I mentioned to you at the time, I think that information would be useful to the governance committee when we start going over the policies. And I think that right now, as we're undergoing a governance restructuring, that a lot of the information that was in that was given to us by students isn't necessarily stuff that needs to go in the bylaws, but a lot of it can actually go in the board policies. So I was curious if the governance committee in some way could have access to that, so we can take some of that information and make sure it's in the policies once we start going over those.
So that's why I prepared the summary report. So the summary report summarizes all of the comments and the major themes. So there's no comment that was in the other report that wasn't summarized in that one, because we didn't get permission to share this information from the students. There's no reason that we would be able to have the actual comments, because that is personal information. Opinions are considered personal information by PIPA. So that's why there's the document that we can use, which is the summary document summarizing all those comments.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Is there any more discussion on this? Belkis?
I just have a question for, I guess, Sylvia. I know I was made aware of there was a bylaw review happening, right? And there were some comments that were made. Were those comments and feedback sent to the consultant, and has the consultant replied?
I'm not sure I understand the question, so I'm gonna try to reformulate it. The consultant doesn't have access to the raw data from the feedback from the students. She has the information.
I can clarify. I meant like from the board members who were giving feedback on the bylaw.
All of the feedback has been given to the consultant to incorporate in the draft bylaws. And if you are referring to things such as comments that that Giovanni made, the consultant's role is to give you the best advice with what she has gleaned from the Societies Act. And then, if you remember, it was also sent to the Societies Act lawyer to figure out what was possible. So the consultant is going to always give you the best advice possible, which may not include what some individuals or some groups or some whoever wants to see in the bylaws. I'm not sure if I'm making myself clear. It's not because we want something, like I want to see some things in the bylaws, and she's told me, sure, you can indicate that, but when you get in trouble, that's when those insertions will come to, excuse me the expression, bite you in the ass.
All right. Yeah, I was just wondering like what the feedback was.
Yeah.
And it can be shared with us. Can we get a report on that?
Yeah. So she will, when she comes back, the last time we spoke with her, and I can't remember, it was a couple of weeks ago, or maybe more. We were trying to figure out the date and all of that, and what the consultation with all the students and timelines and all of that. She did say that she had gleaned all of the comments and was giving us, the SFSS, the best advice possible. Because I think when it comes to risk, and I love the question that Matt posed before, is can you tell me what these risks are? If I was able to do that, then I would be a millionaire, because I would be able to foresee the future. I think with bylaws, in my opinion, what we don't want to be is putting some things in that when we get in trouble, we become the case law on which lawyers build their castles. That's my advice, or my thinking.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Yeah, of course. I'm sorry, are you asking me or are you asking the chair?
You can go ahead.
Good point. But yeah, I was just gonna ask, like, were all the comments rejected from the consultant? Because I know you're talking about things that, like, they give their best advice and everything. So were all comments rejected?
I don't remember. I will have to review the document, because we review the document, put everything in, and then she goes through and gives her commentary and all of that. I would have to recommend. I would have to reread the document again to be able to see, what was, and I would have to reread the lawyer's opinion to see what seemed to jive and what doesn't jive. I can do that and let you know for sure. And I'm sure Sarah can too, and Shanika can too, because the three of us have been working hand on hand looking at these documents for the past year.
Cool. Is there further discussion? All right, seeing none, we can move to the next discussion item, 6.5, which is orientation for council. Oh, sorry.
Hello?
Hi, what's up?
Okay. Yeah, I was having trouble typing and unmuting. It kind of, my computer went basic. But I'm wondering, I know there's also talks about having like a second, getting a second opinion as well for this. So can anyone who's more informed give me like more information on that? I know we still want to move forward with that. I think it's worth doing so. So yeah, just anyone have input on that? I can't even tell if I'm muted.
Can I answer that? Or can I ask a question, actually?
Sure.
Yeah. So when you say a second opinion, do you mean a second consultant, a second lawyer, a second set of students?
I meant like a second lawyer, like a second consultant to look over the bylaws and the comments and feedback and stuff, because I'm just kind of unclear about this consultant. Yeah, I mean, I still have to read the actual reviews and stuff. But I know there have been conversations from the previous board saying that they want to get, they recommended getting a second opinion from like more legal consultation about this. So I think the governance committee should go forward with that.
Okay. Yeah, I suppose, Balkis, sorry, my earbuds are dying. Okay, can everyone hear me? Okay, sounds good.
Yep.
Thank you. So yeah, I guess I can kind of follow up with what Balkis just said. I find value in getting a second opinion from a lawyer just because there is some concern, and this kind of came up in the joint session of board and council around some of the reasoning or rationale behind certain things that were added in the draft bylaws coming off as they were added in there because they're legal requirements, when really they weren't legal requirements. They were just really strong recommendations from the consultant, and it was kind of it was perceived to that assembly that some of the things that were added in there were legal requirements and not just recommendations. So I think just to do due diligence before we actually present any of these bylaws to our students at an AGM or however we are doing it, I think that there is value in getting more legal advice on these bylaws.
Can I make a comment?
Go ahead.
So since Corbett is on the call, I have a feeling that the $25,000 for legal fees that were put in the current budget are going to have to be reviewed, simply because between the legal fees for the governance restructuring and the administrative restructuring and the bylaws, I can't imagine that $25,000 is going to be enough. And subsequent to whatever this administrative restructuring looks like, there will be, I think, a bigger pot required. Since he's on the call, I'm just raising the flag for the Finance Committee to discuss this.
Corbett?
Yeah, I agree. And I'll definitely put that on to our first meeting for the FAC. Thank you for the heads up.
right. No more further discussion on this item? Perfect. All right, we'll move on to the next discussion item then, which is orientation for council. And I brought this forward because council's having their first meeting next Wednesday, and I would like to see more. So I guess just before I start, I think that council as a council serves as an advisory body to the board in our bylaws. That's council's duty, and in order for council to serve in that advisory capacity, I think that they need to be empowered with all the necessary information to execute that role. And I think council's role has really changed over the years, even since 2015, of course, when Carver was implemented. Changed from kind of moved away from a bicameral type of organization, which included council. And I think since then, council's role has kind of diminished a bit. And part of that, I believe, and I feel like it always comes back, when no matter what we're talking about, just comes down to training, and information, and more training. And I think one of the main reasons in the past the council might not have been as active as they could be, or that certain councillors are not as active as they could be, is because there's just a general lack of information about what the board does, or not even just the board, how the organization as a whole runs. And I think that if we can invest more in deeper orientation for council, instead of maybe, because I've been on council and I've been through the orientation presentation twice, and it's good. It outlines the basics of council, but in order for it to actually fulfill its purpose, I think that there are more things that we could go into, and even some of the things we did at our own board orientation should be done with council as well. So I just wanted to open that up for discussion and see if there was any appetite for that. I'm going to let Balkis speak first.
Yeah, I'm fully on board with this because there, like you said, there is a general lack of just information about council or the SFSS, or it's the relation between the two. A lot of times I've seen in different departmental student unions, people, it's a role to be filled, so they just do it. Plus they get paid a little. So I think it's definitely worth investing in, like some type of orientation or manual, even like a manual package type of thing with just key relevant information. It could be online as well. It doesn't have to be a physical thing, but of just the purpose of council, examples of stuff that have happened with council in the past, or like things council has the ability to do, which is kind of anything. It's an advisory body, so just really solidifying that idea, and making sure that, yes, the councillors know, but also set the tone for the rest of the membership and society to know as well that council does exist. And this is another avenue in student government that people could bring forward issues. So I guess setting the tone for future as well. So all for this orientation.
Thank you. Corbett, you can go, and then Sylvia can follow up.
Yeah, maybe this is outside of orientation. I just know from reading past manuals a long time ago from different councils that some years they were more active in things of like requesting presentations and stuff. And at the very least, from an orientation perspective, knowing that they can do that, not necessarily just of SFS, but like I remember reading, most likely this was handled by staff, but reading that, one time years ago, they had one of the ministers for, I think, education come in and give a presentation to council members. I know they do get presentation from time to time for other things. Unfortunately, I don't follow council the last number of years as detailed as I used to. But this is probably a good example for the liaison role to work with the chair and staff to find useful presentations, engagement activities for councils, and encouraging them to request stuff so that they're more active, they're more informed, they're more engaged. I think that would help us a lot, both the society as a whole as well as the student counselors, and to a certain extent board as well, because we would be able to attend in some cases as well. So if that's outside of orientation, then it's outside discussion, but I just want to pitch that in.
Thank you, Corbett. Sylvia, would you like to go ahead?
I just had a question. If you remember at the last presentation, I believe, with the consultant, there was conversation about, the idiosyncrasies of our council, and as you said, the role that it has versus the role that it had. And I'm not sure why we keep throwing Carver as having council become disengaged. I would like to understand that, but my question to you is: has any more thought been given to the idea that you form one mega council as the board of directors, so similar to what AMS has currently, so that you would do away with this, teeter-tottering, as in who is in charge and who gives what and who does what? It might be worth continuing that conversation.
Thank you. And I do agree with you 100%. I think the main point right now is that right now we're working with what we have, and right now the duties of council and the duty of board are what they are. And until we change the bylaws, I don't think I think that we need to work with what we have and make sure that what we have is functioning to the best of its ability. I support that model where we just have one big mega council and there's a smaller executive part of that kind of takes the lead on that, and then that executive is accountable to the larger council. I don't think that if we're taking this back to the bylaw review, I think that right now what we want to present to our students in the fall needs to be less ambitious. We need to take this back to, the whole reason why we're doing this bylaw review is, well, one of the reasons at least is because there are a lot of inconsistencies in it, and there's some things conflicting with the Society Act or parts of it that's conflicting with itself. We need to get those things sorted right now. And of course, that also includes trying to iron out or distinguish the duties between board and council. However, in my view, and the rest of the members of the committee might be able to speak to this, I think that trying to go for a mega council in the fall might not be the best idea. I think that what should be presented to the students in the fall is fixing up what needs to be fixed. And then we can look at doing bigger things like restructuring the board and council and kind of bringing them together, maybe even in the spring or later on in the year. I know Corbin and I were kind of discussing that personally a while ago. If any other members of the committee want to speak to that.
Yeah, I can just jump in quickly because I know Sarah's on the list. I was just going to say, yeah, from my perspective, whether we have a bicameral, unicameral, or some other kind of model like that, that's probably, in my perspective, would be part of the governance review and restructuring research, and would be probably one of the models that we would be part of the. Excuse me, my brain is not organized. It's something that we would include in our report and to the board.
Who's next on the list? Sarah, I believe. Sarah, would you like to go?
Sure, I just wanted to let everyone know what kind of orientation is currently given to council already. So at the first meeting of every semester, so 3 times a year, both myself and either Anna, who is the student union and group coordinator, or John, who's the generalist, give 2 different presentations. So Anna or John goes over the logistics of being a council member, how they get paid, how they get to meetings, how they do reports, all of that kind of stuff. And then I go over the policy side. So I do cover the relationship of council and board. I go through Robert's rules with them. I even look at several different past motions that councils previously have passed over a variety of different years to show kind of the changes. And then I have an opportunity for council to ask any questions about that, or if they have any idea on what direction they want to go each year. I've never had anyone ask a question, unfortunately. I know I'm probably not the most engaging speaker. Perhaps having someone that's, you know, a comedian or someone a bit funnier or more enthusiastic would be a way to engage students, but I do think that they are getting all of the information that is relevant to them, and they're given a history on past things that council has done. So perhaps it's not the orientation. Maybe we should be looking again, like what Sylvia said, another way to engage them, maybe through a restructuring in the bylaws.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Corbett, I can't tell if that is from before, if you're on the list again.
It was from before, but I could also make a comment too. Yeah, like I remember I was on council for like one term in 2016, and I've gone through similar orientations as well. And yeah, the orientation, I think, does its job. I think what we need is also, at least in this year, that maybe we need to have 1 or 2 board members take the extra step to work with some engaged council members, leaders on the council, to look at, try and encourage them to do more. And we can discuss what that would be. Because I know for myself, sometimes when you're in a large group of like 20, 30 people, a lot of them are new, and you have some mixture of some people that are, you know, been there a long time, maybe they're jaded or they're frustrated or they're just there to collect their paycheck. That usually needs, the years that council has been more engaged has seemed to be when a board member or 2 like really worked with council a lot. And the years that council was really unengaged was when board members didn't work with council. And that's happened on and off for multiple years. It's not, you know, so my recommendation is orientation is good to start, but then we should probably schedule something later to have a couple people work with council more to energize them, I guess.
Thank you, Corbett. So, yeah, I agree with most of everything you said. I'm just double checking. Is there any further discussion on this item? Balkis?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that it's definitely worth looking into the overall structure and support for council, but I do agree that for now, for the fall, we should just address what needs to be fixed at the moment, and any larger things can happen further down in the year, because I don't think that would pass if we tried making any major changes to council right now. I think it's important, all the logistics and policies that Sarah, you were addressing, you were saying was in the orientation is definitely important, and stuff that needs to be kept, obviously. I also think it's worth emphasizing, when I talk about the relationship between council and the board, emphasizing the purpose of council and what it's capable of doing. Like the past year, council did a lot, and we haven't seen that kind of energy or involvement in a long time. So just making sure that people are aware of what they're able to do. I think that's important to cover in orientation for now.
Yeah, and I guess you did kind of clarify what I did mention earlier, is that when I spoke of kind of not being so ambitious in the fall and maybe looking into a structure like this in the future. And Balkis, you mentioned what my concern was, and I didn't mention it before when I was speaking, but my only concern was what happens if we bring this giant big change in the bylaws to the annual general meeting in the fall and it fails? Then we're still stuck with the current set of bylaws we have that still have all of these issues in it that have been brought up multiple times. So yes, I'm fully in support. I just think we need to outline a clear process for how we're going to do this in a way that we can make sure it's successful. Sylvia?
So just a quick comment, and this is one of the suggestions that the consultant made, was that, if you try to pass the bylaws in one big chunk, it may all be wholesale rejected because of one particular area, which I think is what happened in 2017, if I'm not mistaken, that, the board went to the members and said, here are the new bylaws and let's pass them. And people said, no, thanks. But this consultant suggested that you pass the bylaws per section, per chunk, so that if the membership rejects a chunk, it doesn't reject the entire bylaw. So we can be in sections compliant with the law, and other sections that they reject, we can say, okay, we'll work further on these until we find a resolution and we're able to move forward. So that may be one way that you might consider putting forward the concept of a council as a board and not have it rejected necessarily if it's, and not have the bylaws rejected if it's voted by chunks. Just a suggestion.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for the suggestion, and it's good that you bring that up. And my only concern with that is something as big as the governing body of the society, I feel, is probably very interconnected with other parts of the bylaws that we would be trying to pass. And if we put this whole slate of bylaw proposals at the AGM and a bunch of them get passed, and then say the one about a mega council doesn't get passed, I don't know if that would cause problems. I'm sure we could set it up in a way where that one chunk, if it doesn't pass, doesn't affect the others. I'm not, Corbett, you're also on the list. I don't know if you have something related to that.
I am generally in favor of trying to modularize our bylaws as best we can, so that there's very little cross connections between bylaws. There will probably be, in some regards, certain things often, either like a layered perspective of, say, powers of the board, then powers of the executive, then powers of whatever. That's kind of as like a layered relationship. But I'm also very much in favor of not doing an omnibus style bylaw change, unless it's the only things as an omnibus, in the sense of like, these three sections they are all connected, they all have to change, we don't really have a choice in this kind of thing. And then everything else afterwards being done chunk by chunk, because as Sylvia's correct, the board tried to do an omnibus in 2017, and I was the one leader of the counter campaign that got it killed, because exactly as you said, there were things on it I liked, but there's a lot of things I did not. I thought it was really the wrong language and the wrong direction for the society, and it was not something I enjoyed doing. It was a very stressful, anxiety-ridden thing. It was my first time ever doing a campaign, especially all online. But at that time, we were doing it through a referendum, which required a 75% yes vote, and it was something I felt that had to be done, and it was successful. And afterwards, I encouraged the board to break it up and do it over multiple terms and do it in smaller chunks, and so that not only to is it more manageable, but also you can have a better conversation or campaign around each chunk and why it's important, or why you think members should vote yes for it, as opposed to saying everything's on the, like, just accept it all and not. And my perspective, it takes more time, but it is lower risk for failure. And if a failure does happen, it should not set back the whole thing.
Thank you, Corbett. Is there any further discussion on this item? Perfect. And I do sense that this will be an ongoing topic throughout our next little while on the governance committee and probably with the board as a whole. So yeah, cool. So if there's no more discussion on that, we'll move to our next agenda item then, which is adjournment. So be it resolved to adjourn the meeting at 4:33 p.m. Is there a mover for that motion?
I'll move. Corbett.
Corbett moves. Do I have a seconder? Matt seconds. All those in favor seeking unanimous consent. If you dissent, please unmute your mic. If not, the meeting is adjourned. So thanks everyone for coming out today.
Or for staying in.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Thanks,
I hope
everybody.
you guys.
Bye.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
Bye, Sarah. Thank you.
All right, peace out, yo.
Bye, Matt.